Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to roll the dice here, do this without my headphones on. And like I said earlier, there was no sense of time. Time is not a concept in the next reality. And they explain this incredible, they give this incredible insight on eternity and hell here in a minute. So most of you know I do a lot of corresponding. I love reading the testimonies I receive. I absolutely love that people trust my advice when it comes to scripture and faith. Like it's I don't know, it's not like prideful or anything, but it makes me feel good that I'm doing something. You know, that's the whole point, is to try and do something for God. So when I get all these emails, questions, conversations, not only does it gives me some production to do, but I learn things and I remember things when I'm telling people stuff. I had a conversation late tonight, and it reminded me of some things in my past, and I was grateful for that. So it's always good to talk to our brethren. So what I'm going to do is read a testimony tonight. And I've received a lot of near-death experiences. You know, I've received a lot of testimonies on the topic. And you all know how I feel about not saturating the market with near-death experiences. So I've received a lot, and I'm trying to stay in that same lane of the hell testimonies that I want this channel and this ministry to be known for, essentially, because I want to drive this home. And now in these times we're in, we're getting a lot more testimonies that are literally lining up together. I mean, just almost identical. And I had one testimony I was going to share, and then I had this one, and I'm like, well, if I'm thinking about reading a testimony, then I'll read this one. And I've changed a couple things to keep it private. Basically, what I'm going to read for you tonight is essentially like an affirmation of what I've been trying to get across to everyone since I started the L.O.C.K ministry channel. And I say it like that because I know some of you were here way back before this became L.O.C.K ministry, and it was like blogging with random videos I would make. I was a comedian most of my life. I was just a comedian, and I made people laugh, and that's what I done years ago when I started this particular channel. But and people who've been around from the beginning know that I quit doing that because I felt bad for making these comical videos, when I was like, well, if I'm not going to do this whole ministry thing yet, then I probably shouldn't do that. So I felt guilty for it, and I basically quit making funny videos. But so before I start, I just want to tell out, first of all, please send me your testimonies, talk to me, whatever. Here is my email. Send it. Whatever, just say hi or whatever. This is my highlight right now, especially past few weeks. I'm kind of just internet pasture right now for the most part. I'm still interacting with crowds. I did tonight. I had a great experience tonight. But I might tell you guys about that. I don't know. But anyway, you came here to listen to this testimony. I just want to say, if you have a testimony or experience, you should do this. Write it down. Like, if you write it down, you will essentially subconsciously become a writer, and you will sit and think about a detail because you're trying to get a detail across to someone, and it will make you think about it. Because once you hear this, wow, this was written fantastically. I mean, it was written to me it was written for me. So you'll see a few things in there like this is talking to me. But for the most part, I've taken a lot of that conversation side out. But I'm just saying, like, if you have something incredible, yeah, recording it and telling about it is great, but if you can write it down, you will get a great response from that, much better detail. Like, I've written books about my life. I've got a whole nother channel about that. I've had a crazy life. And when I sat down to write it, because I told these stories my whole life, so that was proof to me about Scripture, how they could write it later, because they told all these stories. They remember them and they were there. But anyway, let me just get into this. You should write down your experiences. Okay, so here we go. I would like to share my experience with you. This event completely changed my life. So much so, you could say that before this happened, I was a complete narcissist. I was always focused on myself. I cared about my loved ones and I wanted what was best for them. However, I was bitter and hateful, and I would let nothing come before my own personal gain. I even experienced this event because I refused medical attention. And I refused medical attention because I would have had to go without my drugs and alcohol and destructive behavior. Because of my health issue, I believe I had nearly died multiple times prior to this event, but I would always come to gasping for air and feeling very strange. And sometimes I would have a blue skin tone that always made me suspect I had gone a while without air. So on the night of this event, I'm in my bed, asleep, but I suddenly find myself standing in my room, looking down at myself, lying there in bed. This was incredibly otherworldly to be seeing myself in a way I had never seen. It wasn't like a picture or looking in a mirror. I knew it was me, but it was the first time I had ever actually seen me in a three-dimensional sense and without a mirrored effect or looking at a picture. I was so mesmerized. I'm standing here looking at my earthly body, and that makes me think to look at my hands. So I raise my hands to look at them, and I'm instantly distracted by the sight of my perfect hands. I lost interest in my earthly body and began to examine my new one. The imagery is something my human brain still struggles to remember till this day. The best way I can describe this is what I seen is what our bodies are supposed to look like in an unfallen world. And I was also seeing this with perfect vision. I had scars on my physical body and years of wear and tear. But this body I now had was young and glowing. I guess you could say it was just a perfect younger version of myself. At the same time I'm realizing I now have a perfect body, I'm also realizing that I might be dead. Because someone or something had showed up in the room with me. And I think that's when the gravity of the situation actually kicked in. Because when the thing showed up in my room, and I'm saying thing right now because at the time I didn't know what it was. So when this otherworldly presence arrived, my surroundings started fading to darkness. After things turned black, I felt as though I was floating, or at least it was a sensation of floating. And that turned into this sensation of vertigo. This was not a dream, but it reminds me of how sometimes we dream. We get this feeling of moving really fast and all we want to do is wake up. But there's no waking up. Wow. I've read this before. I've thought about what they're saying here. That feeling. I know that, like that feeling, and you're waking yourself up in a dream. I know that's what I'm telling you. Writing this stuff down gives you great detail. I mean, not saying that somebody wouldn't have thought of that, but writing stuff down changes things. It does. Moving really fast, and all we want to do is wake up. But with this, there's no waking up. Oh, in case I forget, I'll mention it now. Time doesn't exist. Just keep in mind while I'm explaining this, it happened over the course of a few seconds and over the course of 1,000 years. So the vertigo, riding a tornado feeling, set in as the darkness overtook the room. I wasn't afraid, I guess you could say. But surprisingly, I did feel a sense of sadness that my family was going to find me. And my thoughts were with them. And looking back, that was a big deal. Because here I am, pretty sure I'm dead, but I'm worried about my loved ones. I gotta say, this was probably my first dose of genuine empathy. Obviously, nobody's as heartless as I'm letting on, but after explaining about going where I went, you'll understand that I was actually feeling empathy for the first time, like real empathy. And now, looking back, I believe that feeling of empathy caused me to want to stay. I didn't consciously think about it. I just think my desire was for my family not to find me dead. So that desire caused a resistance from being pulled into that tornado thing. Or maybe it would be better described as a swirling around a drain, like you start out with big long loops, and as you get further down, you get closer to the center, and you start to swirl faster. So it's like the drain. Whatever you want to call it, as soon as I desired to stay, this whirlpool grabbed me hard. Like I was on the outer loop and got jerked towards the center of the drain. And once I hit the center of the drain, everything goes completely black. The outer loop. See, I've thought about this. They're saying they were on the outer loop, and that feeling of vertigo was long, but this thing grabbed them towards the center. So I'm imagining these things. The way this was described was fantastic. Whatever you want to call it, as soon as I desired to stay, this whirlpool grabbed me up hard. Like I was on the outer loop and got jerked towards the center of the drain, and once I hit the center of the drain, everything goes completely black. So now I'm inside this blackness, but I feel like it's this underwater tornado thing. Extreme vertigo feeling. And as I'm in this blackness, seeing only blackness and feeling only vertigo, I knew I was in transit somewhere. And the whole time the thing was there too. I just knew it was there. It was kind of like knowing, because you know just about everything, but you're not concerned with the amount of knowledge you have. You're literally just going with the flow. I'm sure that was no pun intended. So while all this is going on, I'm getting everything in my life played back to me with a big emphasis on God. And it wasn't just conversations or big events where I had a real chance to accept God. You know how you might see someone on a street corner holding up a sign about God, or you might pass someone in a parking lot and they're preaching, and at the time people like me just think they are some wackadoo? No way. Even if you just pass by some random street preacher and you see and hear that, it was an opportunity you had to discover God. And I was getting ready to say this, but they say it. You are right. God wants to be absolutely certain that everyone alive has had ample opportunity to listen. But I'll get to that. I'll get to this in a moment. So I was getting a complete playback of all these moments in my life. I was seeing, well, not seeing in the human sense, because it is this infinite void of blackness. But you can see, because the things you are seeing and experiencing are 1,000-fold. As far as things like emotions, understanding, sadness, despair, and so on. Everything just completely turned up to 1,000. It really is like you are experiencing these things for the first time. Well, I'll just say that what we feel in the next world was not and will never be intended for our human bodies. I think this could be why so many have a hard time describing these feelings, simply because the human body is not designed to feel them on this level. So I'm seeing all these horrible things. I will say there was a handful of good things, mostly from my childhood, but they just passed by like a grain of sand in this ocean of negativity. Everything I was seeing and experiencing was negative. I could actually feel the negative emotions. Like I stated earlier, it's really hard to explain these turned up emotions to someone in a human body. I wasn't just feeling these negative emotions, I was completely aware of who was causing these feelings of negativity. And that someone was me. I was actually living through the bad things I had done to people. And thanks to having new understanding lately, I do realize now that I was experiencing not only what I did to them in the moment, but I experienced the effect it had on them throughout their life. And even if they did bad things to people, if I caused them to do that, then I felt the pain of people I didn't even know. This experience is so incredibly profound. And can you imagine this is happening to a narcissist? I don't know if this is some special punishment for a narcissist, but I have heard several accounts identical to mine, and I wonder if people are not putting two and two together. I can tell you, I didn't even know what a narcissist was. Me neither, brother. Until narcissism became something like a virus that is now spreading across the world. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the hardest thing for people to judge is ourselves. Like I said, I have heard several different accounts of hell, and I believe people experience these things. It's one of those things where the devil is in the details. And you yourself seem to have a great understanding of these things. And what you are doing has had an impact on my understanding of this experience. So, I was experiencing all these horrible things I did to people. I was living it out in their shoes. Every time I let someone down or treated someone bad, even if I made a passive comment and hurt someone's feelings. So I'm feeling this vertigo while every single thing I had done was being put back on me to experience. And this wasn't happening in order or something. I was experiencing all these things all at once, over and over again. And like I said earlier, there was no sense of time. Time is not a concept in the next reality. And they explain this they give this incredible insight on eternity and hell here in a minute. I know I mentioned how dark it was. But while all this is going on, I'm suddenly swallowed up by the darkness. That's the only way I can describe it. Because somehow it became darker. And for the first time during this whole experience, I felt fear set in. And I somehow just knew that now comes the bad stuff. I know, right? Things are going to get worse than this. It was like knowing your time is up in a world where time is non-existent. I know I keep saying this, but this feeling of dread cannot be comprehended by the human mind. We just can't comprehend these sensations. So it's hard to explain something that we are not supposed to understand. This feeling I was having was one of malevolence. This was pure, unrestrained evil, and I had just been submerged in it. It was everywhere, all around me, even inside me, pure, unadulterated evil. And the whole time, I'm aware that I'm getting closer to the source of this impending evil. Because of the water drain effect, I could feel myself getting closer to the crux of the drain. Everything was already overbearing to the point that you actually craved to just no longer exist. Like if you were no more, that would be a mercy in this place. And yet here I was, draining down in this whirlpool, and I knew the end of the drain was close. And at this point, I started hearing faint sounds. These sounds seemed to be so far away, but at the same time, right beside me. But as I got closer, I could very plainly hear this sound was the screams of countless multitudes. And in that moment, my body seems to painfully fold up to fit in the drain, and I become a part of this multitude. And this is so incredibly hard to explain, but I just think of it like this. Imagine you drop a single drop of water in the ocean. Could you ever find that drop of water again? No, because that drop of water is now a part of the ocean. Only this is an ocean of despair and negativity. So once I hit this multitude of others, these horrible smells of things burning, rotten garbage, and sulfur all start to overcome me. The smells are just horrific and unbearable. Hold that thought. In this world, we haven't experienced what it is to live for real yet. You know that this world, they're talking to me. You know that this world is dulled down. And when we go to the next one, it is essentially like awakening from a dream. So in the next world, or in the real world, as you like to say, you are seeing, smelling, and feeling everything a millionfold. So the smells were absolutely disgustingly repulsive, and they were pure, if that makes sense. Like how our bodies are perfect in the next world, so is everything else, including the smells. I can't stress this enough. Everything in the next reality is real. This world just isn't real, my friend. I could taste the stench setting on my tongue and inside my sinus cavities. And the gases mixed with the heat made you fight to breathe. It was like I had been rolled up in a dough ball of pure evil and negative, despairing energy. And I'm feeling it all at once and separate at the same time. Also, a strange thing about all this, you know how if someone is in danger or scared for their life, they might scream for help or call out to be saved? I mean, I feel like that's human instinct. But what's strange is I didn't do this. I just didn't feel the need to. There's also a feeling of knowing that screaming out for help is pointless. But because I had lived out every time someone tried to tell me about God, I knew about God now. And I had this horrible feeling that if I knew what to do, I would call out to God. But anything to do with Jesus was completely lost on me because I had spent zero time learning about the gospel. So I'm in this endless void that feels like I'm standing on a furnace with a balled up body, And I knew that I was dead. I knew that there was no way to be saved from this, and nobody was coming to save me anyways. And it was beyond certainty that I could never, ever go back. There is no do-overs. This is it. And time doesn't exist in hell. Even though there was technically a beginning for me, there was definitely no end. And I say technically because the longer you are there, the less you remember about this world. You experience all these horrible things, but everything you did is mixed up. I'll get to that. But what I'm saying is, I believe at a certain point, everyone completely forgets entering hell. And that is how it becomes eternal for them. They don't remember coming in, and they never leave. Wow. I loved this. I don't love that. I'm just, the way that they explain this, because like I said, I've been through this a few times. I've read this, and that part, you don't remember coming there. So it would be eternity, like eventually. And I've had amnesia before from depression. I experienced it. It was a very short lapse, a few minutes long, but amnesia is terrifying. I mean, absolutely horrible. And you can look that up if you want. Like, it's legit. You can become so depressed that you get amnesia. And I actually have a video lined up to talk about all those times, but I don't want to get off track here. That's insane to think about. Like, that is eternity, because you forget the beginning. So therefore, there is no beginning, no end. I'll just note that, yes, self-proclaimed Christians were right there with me. And you'll perhaps understand why I knew this in a moment. For me, in this place, I knew I deserved to be here. I was experiencing all these horrific things, but I was also accepting this punishment. I knew that what is happening to me is nobody's fault but my own. It's all on me. There is no greater accountability than in the next reality, when you go to live for the first time. You can tell this individual talks to me a lot. I had mentioned I was in this ocean of people, countless multitudes. If you could count every grain of sand on earth, you might get close to the number of people there. The amount of poor souls in this place really is incomprehensible. I'm mentioning this again because each individual had their own tribulations and suffering that they were going through. And I didn't just know my reasons for being there. I knew each individual's reasons for being there. And I was also experiencing their experience alongside of mine. And the people who had done even worse atrocities would pull others into their suffering. That makes sense to me, because I spent years and years with a narcissist, and when I'm the opposite of that, right? I'm don't want to get in it, but I'm just saying, I draw energy from that negativity. So misery does love company. You can be the most happiest go lucky person, and you get next to a horrible rotten soul, you feel it. You know what I'm talking about. So I've thought about this, what they're saying, how you are experiencing this, but somebody else there with you, theirs is worse. So the punishment is you go to the worst one. Everybody experiences the worst one. We were all connected, suffering one another's punishments. but at the same time, we were a million miles apart. This is especially hard to explain, so I'll leave it at that and move on. So here I am in this unfathomable, torturous place and experiencing all these horrible atrocities. And at some point, I had this sudden revelation or enlightenment that I was in hell. That that sounds strange to just realize that to be there all that time, and then all of a sudden I have this revelation that I'm in hell. And I read that, like I said, I've read this a few times, but then I realized, time, like they keep saying, time's not a thing there. So, we're sitting here listening to the story, and they've been through all this stuff, and then they're like, have this, now I'm realizing, hey, I'm in hell. But see, this is all happening simultaneously. Like, there is no procession of time there. There's no linear. See, that's something that we need to comprehend there too when we hear these stories about hell and how time isn't there, and they keep saying, I'm experiencing all at once. That's because if there's no time, then there's no linear. There's no start to finish. So this person at some point, they're remembering events, but like they said, at some point I suddenly have this enlightenment that, hey, I'm in hell. So I thought that was interesting, and I didn't realize it honestly until the last time I read it, and I was listening to the video playback. I had this sudden revelation or enlightenment that I was in hell. I was accepting this fact, and it really sucked to have this dropped in your lap all of a sudden, because you know how easily it could have been different. Like, it's so incredibly despairing to know that you had ample opportunity to choose God. And I had heard, and I still hear about little demons, monsters, and torture chambers with torturing devices and all this demonic stuff. But for me, I didn't see any of that. And that's another reason I'm thinking this particular experience is leaned towards the narcissist. I'm not saying that everyone doesn't experience the same thing, but the evidence is overwhelming that narcissists are experiencing these things. But as I was saying, I didn't see demons or cubes or chambers. What I saw and experienced was starving people, like essentially starvation beyond any kind of rescue, unquenchable horrific thirst, misery and despair, and also what I would describe as being dunked in a pool of liquid nitrogen. Because every fiber in you was being burned inside and out, every molecule, every strand of hair. But at the same time, you were completely shaking from the cold, like hypothermic teeth chattering cold. I've got to say, I've heard a few stories just like mine. I've heard you talk about this stuff. I have also had a long time to think about it, and I agree with a lot of folks apparently. Because all of the suffering and torture, the despair and thirst, it seems like all of that was nothing compared to being separated from that love and presence we are all so familiar with. We don't even recognize it until it's gone. Well, definitely unbelievers have a zero clue that they have this and carry it with them. But we know it in our soul and subconscious that there is most definitely a presence and we are connected to it. But once you lose this presence, there's actually no way to describe this pain and misery. It's like adding an extra sense to your 5 senses. And you only get this extra sense when you are separated. You could call it the separation sense. There's just no way to really describe this. But what I'm trying to say is, to be cut off from that is the same suffering as multiplying hell 1,000 times over. I don't care who you are, what your walk of life is. When you are separated from this, what I know now to be God, it is the worst hell imaginable. We've talked about that. I believe that that's what Christ experienced when he said, Father, why have you forsaken me? I believe that was the last hit that he had to take. So I'm in this multitude of people. We are all suffering together while also simultaneously being completely alone. And while all this is going on, I have this moment of sanity and awareness, and above me was a presence. And it was as though I was standing before the all-supreme of existence. I mentioned accountability. In the next reality, there is absolutely no way to lie and no place to hide. You are like glass, fully transparent. You cannot twist the truth or omit the facts. So instead of representing myself and pleading my case to this all-supreme judge, I was actually acting as my own prosecution. And I knew I was the defendant, but I also knew everything about me. And I had no doubt this was just. And I knew I deserved this. There were no excuses. All there is and can be in the next world is truth. So I began to prosecute myself and tell this supreme judge that I am exactly where I belong. And I was basically sharing these images of my life with the judge telepathically, showing him this overwhelming evidence that I deserve every bit of this. While I'm saying this, the thick darkness around me gets pushed back. I would describe it like I was suffocating under a mound of dirt, and the dirt was suddenly pushed off me. And it was a light pushing the darkness off me. Then I'm engulfed in the light, and the feeling is undescribable. I think I've experienced something like that. All I can say is this light is that love you never want to be separated from. And it's being poured out on me. This was the greatest feeling I ever had or ever will have. So this living light of colors we don't yet know of, it's full of compassion, mercy, and grace, and it's being poured out on me at an exponential level. And suddenly there's this huge explosion, and it seemed to just go on forever in this unmeasurable expanse. It was so strange because there wasn't an echo or anything, but the sound just seemed to be eternal or something. I've had a hard time trying to understand that part. I'm still in this solid black void, but this light overpowers all things, including this place I was in. The light made me understand that everyone here, including myself, had been given a choice at some point in their lives. And some had been given the choice 1,000 times. This was unbearable. Knowing that we could have chosen Jesus at any time during our life, and knowing that not only our worldly lives would have been better, but we could have avoided this place altogether. This was almost the same pain as that losing that connection feeling, that separation feeling. Knowing about this choice was an incredible punishment. And we all had to live an eternity knowing we had made the wrong choice. There's no opportunity to change anything. And everyone in hell knows this constantly. So I told the light, I belong here. I said, what's happening to me is just. But the whole time I'm interacting with this light of creation, I'm getting more and more love and compassion poured out on me. It's like I'm filthy, and this light is like water being poured out on me, washing off the dirt. And with this light above me now brighter, it was kind of lighting up this section of the expanse of hell I was in. And it seemed as though this place really didn't have an end or a beginning. And also, no one else around me could see this light. As far as I know, everyone else was oblivious to this light being here in hell. It was like I was the only person in this expanse that was lucid at the moment. So I guess there's all this gnashing on at teeth and wow. But it's blackness, so I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to them some more about gnawing and gnashing of teeth. He's lucid. I just keep imagining that, like in a crowd of people who's gone insane. This light let out another loud sound, and I'm finally realizing that this explosive sound is actually the light talking. So the light was basically explaining that I'm being given a choice now, like a second chance to make the right choice. But I wouldn't accept this offer. The old me would have jumped all over this. But the new me, the me who not only experienced empathy for the first time, but it was empathy on a supernatural level, I had lived 1,000 years in the shoes of those I hurt. So this new me did not want to leave. I felt as though I needed to be punished, like I'm right where I belong. That's wild to think about. I'm running out of time. But that's wild to think about. Like you know, like that's kind of how I live right now. So it's like the closer you get to Christ, you know what this person's talking about. And then this portal thing slowly appeared above me. It started out like a faint little orb and turned into a rather large opening. It was like I was looking into heaven from a manhole cover, and I seen like the tops of trees, and there were people there looking down at me, convincing me to take this opportunity that I was being presented. They were telling me things I can't remember, but I feel like they were explaining forgiveness and how important it was. And now I had this incredible new gift, which basically now I'm convinced that I was cured of my narcissism. And that's the gift alongside of my new faith. I have to say, these regular looking people, aside from being young and perfect looking, LOL, were really convincing. And it didn't take long. I accepted my second chance, and at that very moment I thought, yes, I accept. I opened my eyes in my human body, and I was gasping for air, and I could hardly move. My body was numb like how you get when your hand has bad circulation. My body was tingling, and I felt as though I had a mild paralysis that was slowly wearing off. I still felt like I was curled up into a ball, and I guess that was a mental thing for being there so long and feeling that balled up feeling. I very slowly made my way to the kitchen sink because it was the closest water source, and I drank so much water, it was like I had this thirst of walking through the desert for 1,000 years without a drop of water. So needless to say, after this happened, I took Jesus seriously. And I also read the entire Bible, and I've probably read it multiple times by now. You are absolutely right about how you are blessed with a new intellect and understanding after reading the entire Bible. This sounds strange to say, because this feels like my second life now, but after this experience, for the first time in my life, I had this huge sense of empathy and compassion. I actually cared about everyone. And in case you share this, as L.O.C. Ministry says, you don't have to be perfect and stop living your sinful life before giving it to Jesus. But in order to actually live in the real life Jesus has waiting for us, you have got to pursue Him now. Do not wait another day. Start your journey to truth now. Say yes to the light now, because very few will get that opportunity I was blessed with. Thanks for the privacy, and thanks for reading my testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, now I hope that worked out all right. But now you can see why this particular one here was such a big deal to me. This is flagship L.O.C.K ministry, not casting your pearls, but casting this. I mean, this right here was incredible. And it's somebody familiar with me too, so it made it even better. But this was fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you for listening to this. Here is my email. Email me your testimonies. You never know, I might make a video reading it, but I love to read them. If you send me something, just a story, I will read it. If it's this long, I'll read it. And if you send me something that inquires a response, you'll get your response. I love talking to you all. I'm going to end this because this took a long time. But thank you all so much for everything. I'm so grateful. And if you want to donate to L.O.C.K Ministry, help me out what I'm doing and what I'm desiring to do, which I plan on making a video about all that. My donation information is in the description. All you have to do is go click the description, read it, and you'll see the ways to donate to L.O.C.K Ministry. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so grateful for y'all. I love you all. May God's will be in your life.